What's up, everyone? Welcome to Dogs Down South. I'm your host, Ted Turner. Hey, good evening. Good evening. It is a Wednesday night, and it is, I think we'll call this show Overreaction Wednesday. We're gonna talk Georgia, Kentucky. We're gonna just really lay it all out there. Talk about everything that possibly went wrong, what went wrong. We're gonna talk about what went right. And we're going to just have some time where we spread this all out on the table tonight. As we're in a bye week, obviously we don't play anyone this weekend, so we can take our time tonight. I'm gonna add to the stage Mr. Richman Green. What's up, Richman? How are you, buddy?
Hey.
Hey, man. Let's hop right in. Obviously, we're calling this Overreaction Wednesday. We're gonna sit here and we're gonna banter a little bit on everything we saw from the Georgia Kentucky game a little bit. And probably say some of the things that a lot of fans out there are saying. And we're going to get it all out of our system. I mean, obviously, Richman, as you've been reading, you see there's a ton of Georgia fans who are doing the meltdown, the skies falling in Athens type thing. And so it's pretty wild, man. But at the end of the day, I think what we can do tonight is we can talk about what practically happened, what needs to be improved on, and what we saw that was good, because there was some good out there too. I think ESPN's doing a little meltdown session. I think our fan base is doing a little meltdown session. So let's just lay it all out there tonight. Let's hop right in. First off, obviously Georgia played Kentucky 13-12 win in Lexington. It's a night game in Lexington. Um, Kirby said it all week. He said it's tough to play in Lexington. It's shown that when we played in Lexington, I actually told the story before we knew. We've been talking about it all throughout the week in our group text. We were like, look, there's a plan on, there's weather supposed to be coming through there. And if it gets nasty, this could be a tight game. Obviously, because a couple years back we played Kentucky on the road. It was run game versus run game. And it was a really tight ball game. But everybody expects Georgia to look good every single Saturday. We've talked about the talent level that's at Georgia. We've talked about what to expect from them and what everybody wants to expect from the number one team in the nation. But obviously some things didn't show up. So let's hop right in. We did some things with film breakdown. I know, Richman, you turned me on to this guy called the film. What is his name? The film guy, right?
Film guy, Austin Brooks.
Austin Brooks, the film guy. And I think both of us watched it pretty much straight through and saw a lot of things that we could sit here and show you that today, or we could just kind of pump his page and go check him out, Austin Brooks, the film guy, where I think I saw some of the best commentary on breaking down the Georgia film that I've seen in a long, long time. And what it boils down to is I think all of our Bobo haters should go take a look at some of that stuff, because although we love to blame Bobo for a lot of situations, there were a lot of situations that we were put in where some of those plays that he called just didn't work because our team didn't do the assignment. But let's step right in real quick. Let's look at what we know happened, right? So obviously one of the biggest things that everybody's talking about is Carson Beck didn't look like Carson Beck. Now, I'm going to let you speak into this a little bit, Richman, but from what we know coming out of the game, we have an MCL. We have a non-throwing shoulder MCL type thing going on with him. So it is something that is not serious. He did say, thank God we have an off week, but we could obviously tell Carson was not himself. Is this possibly a reason why he wasn't himself? Let's speak into that a little bit.
I think after looking at the film, they would line up and you couldn't tell what they were going to do. And obviously they were zone, but they would go zone 3 or zone 4, and they had safeties and cornerbacks running all over the place. As soon as the ball snapped, they were running all into position, and I think that is what really freaked him out and messed up his timing. And it started early in the game. I mean, they did it all game. I mean, they really disguised their pass coverage, and it was phenomenal. And I'd never seen it like that before. It was fascinating. And along with that, they had fantastic defensive line play. So a lot of times, talking about Bobo, Bobo would call the right pass play, and he would flood a zone because we knew they were going to be in zone. We didn't, before the play, you didn't know if they were going to be in cover 3 or quads or what, but he would flood a zone, but he had no time to throw it.
Yeah.
He was running for his life, and we know, he's a pocket passer. He
Right.
hard if you give him the time, but he was rattled, and it was obvious early.
Yeah, I like what you said about that. We both looked at the same thing. We looked at what we call in football what kind of shell they were giving us, right?
Right.
So you could never tell. It was like even the film guy, which has looked at that tape for UGA for years. I actually didn't even realize I follow this guy for some of his he's usually one of the first, second, or third questions to Kirby on pressers.
Right.
And I've seen him on TikTok after games talking through, what he saw, things of that nature. But very smart, intelligent guy. I encourage you guys to go check him out if you're a doubter about what's going on in the offense. Because I rewatched the game, and I also went and watched this whole entire episode with him in there. And the shells they were giving us, it was hard to detect because they were walking people up on the line. They were giving us a 5-6 man like bear front.
Yep.
But you couldn't tell what it was because they were giving us a quarters look in the back, which obviously we know in defensive terminology, quarters is something that you like to run because we're getting a lot of passing plays that are hitting for deep and mid-range hitters. And so we want to make sure we don't give up the big play in quarters. But also, like you said, it was like, when you look at the shell of what they're giving us, a cover 3, cover 2, cover 2 is more based off of, okay, we don't want to get beat deep, but we want to make sure we have coverage, but we're also giving up some things in the box, and we're determining whether those linebackers and defensive tackles are going to make that stop in the box without having to have help. But they were giving a lot of that. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, I understand he was confused in coverage, but then why wasn't some of the other stuff working? If we're not beating them deep, why wasn't some of the run working? Why wasn't some of the swing pass stuff? Why didn't we see Arian Smith carrying it left or right? I think what you saw was because of the confusion, and Kirby's talked about it. He said, Carson has a lot of leadway to he really doesn't. Him and Bobo don't use the in-ear, in-helmet system a lot. It actually, from what I understand, it actually makes it worse for Carson. Carson likes to go fast, and he likes to he likes to be able to just read the offense, and they have a lot of trust in him to do that. But I think what we got into and what we saw though, Richman, with with Beck, was there was a lot of very sketchy line play, and there was a lot of very sketchy like assignment blocking. I know one play that in particular they talked about is when we ran the correct play early in the game.
Right.
We ran a swing pass left to ETN, and it was man coverage on the left. They actually flooded the right side, and Urasek, the tight end from Stanford, completely blew his block. And they also had to get the ball out much quicker because Ernest Green got blown up, and it still could have hit, but Urasek blew his block, and guess what? That was house. That was probably a 70-yard run by ETN that night, and ETN was one of the highlights of our offensive, side of the ball that night. So
there was several plays. There were several plays like that would have gone to the house, except for one person blew the assignment and it blew it up. And I have to give Kentucky credit; they tackled really well. We didn't tackle well.
Right. I think that's what the second thing we looked into. Maybe you can, and before we close the back on Carson, like I think maybe some of it might be the shoulder, but he did run the ball a little bit when he had to. But you got to think, if he's throwing the ball and he's having to make these throws from a guy with a shoulder injury needs to have a nice pocket. I mean, he needs to have that nice
comfort,
that horseshoe pocket. And I feel like that it was very uneasy all night long. And when a guy with an injury, that's, I don't know. I mean, it's one that he hasn't practiced and played with. So it was obviously he was dealing with it. And
he took some hits, and he took quite a few from that left side.
Exactly. Funny, it's on his non-throwing shoulder, right?
Right.
And he's right-handed. So, can you blame him? I don't think it was a Carson Beck normal
Another thing,
night.
I think another thing that unsettled him was, oftentimes when things aren't working, we go to that perimeter pass,
Mhm,
and every one of those got blown up because they were
mhm.
not blocking. Our
Yeah,
receivers traditionally have been fantastic at blocking on the perimeter and downfield, and they were terrible. I mean,
yeah,
across the board.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. Assignment football was not good. So I think as we start to look into the offense and, as Athens and surrounding fans of Georgia start to look on, and I'll be honest with you, like I'm going to step out there and I've listened to some Georgia podcasts this week. I think it's really good we're going on Wednesday because everybody that went on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I think they're just way overreacting. I think,
Well, I was sick at
yes,
my stomach until I got to Austin. Didn't his show didn't come out until sometime Monday, and
correct.
I
I
was
think we
sick at
were
my
texting
stomach
Monday
all
night.
day
Yeah,
Sunday. Something else he said, and I've seen this pop up in a lot of posts. Why didn't he audible out? Like when they would run the ball into a 6-man front,
mhm,
they're just running into that stack. And why didn't he audible out? And Brooks said this, and I never really thought about it, but he's like, in hostile stadiums, you don't do a lot of audibles.
yeah.
You just run the play.
Well, yeah, because what are you're betting on red and you're betting on black. Like you're going, hey, everybody knows what play we called. If we block it right, if we run it right, we're guaranteed 6 to 10 right now, which we need. But if we audible out, I have 11 different pieces of communication that could break down, and we could
That's right.
possibly not only get negative, we could get a turnover, which we didn't turn the ball over. We tried to. A couple of calls that came back. You know, that we came back on and
Right.
we go, if that would have happened, what would the score have been? Right.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and we could talk about that all day long, but I think the biggest thing that we can look at tonight and continue to talk through is, and I've heard it, I listened to a podcast. I wish I could call them out right now, but these two guys are grad students from Georgia and they came on a Saturday night, and you could tell that that's definitely not a time to come in the room and start talking with a. I guess what I'm saying is with a sensible look at our team, because
Right.
it was like, oh my gosh, it was like we are soft on the defensive line, the offensive line. We are. I get that, I get it, but right now, Georgia is the third best defensive team in the SEC statistically. Do you know who number 4 is?
No, who?
Kentucky. So my thing is, you're talking about a defense who's not given up a touchdown in 4 games. The only 2 teams above them are Tennessee, and I think the top team is Ole Miss, but we're going to talk about them in a little bit. The people they have played, I think between Tennessee and Ole Miss are combined. Those 2 teams that they've played are combined 2-4. So I hope your defensive statistics are good against Kent State and Chattanooga and those type teams. So I think when you look at Kentucky's defense, when you look at Kentucky's offense, I mean that might set a different tone. Kentucky's got one of the worst offenses statistically in the SEC right now. But here's my thing: they may understand that when you're talking about a Tennessee, right? Why the Tennessee games and why are these games where Tennessee's playing in and Ole Miss is playing in? Why are they scoring 60, 70 points a game? Well, guess what? Their offenses are built around they're running 4 plays to 1 from last Saturday night. Kentucky wanted to keep possessions low. They wanted to keep the ball out of our hands, and they were content with if they could continue to fall forward and get 4 or 5 yards, which against a very depleted defensive front, very depleted, and we'll talk about that. I think when you look at it, Kentucky, let's not give Kentucky the credit. I think their defensive line played incredibly aggressive. I think their linebackers. I mean, you have a linebacker that was. I think we can all look back last year and the year before last that if James Dumas Johnson is not a part of the linebacking crew at Georgia, we don't win some of those national championships. On top of some very, very good linebackers and on top of a very good secondary for Kentucky. I mean, Harrison's an
Their
SEC All
defense,
American.
their defense is very experienced too.
Yes. And they've been together for a while. So we knew it was going to be a dogfight. And so I think it was just, prime cooking. And then when you look at 3, so we talked about Carson, we talked about line play. Obviously, Monroe Freeling came in for Ernest Green. in the second half a little bit. And man, I'm liking Monroe Freeling a lot. I mean, he gave us some depth over there. Are we going to miss? And I think it's a good time to talk about this too. Obviously, we lost we lost. Give me the name.
We
Give me
lost
the name.
Our guard.
Crazy, right? I mean, we're just
Yeah.
looking at a blank space right now. Anyways, so we get Dylan Fairchild and we get Micah to come in and they get the guard. So when we look at some of these things, Tate, Rutledge. So when we look at these things that happened, they're not. I mean, yeah, Tate's he was having a good game in my opinion. The right side was having a good game until he went out. I think nothing dropped off because when you look at the right side of that line, it sustained a lot. We gained a lot when Monroe Freeling got in there. I love the depth of our line. If anybody doesn't know the news, Tate did have tightrope surgery. So you're looking at 4 to 6 weeks. Obviously, Brock came back in 29 days, but 27 days. He's a freak of an athlete. So that's a little over 3.5 weeks or so. But you're probably looking more like Tate to probably help us out after we get through the gauntlet and hopefully around Florida time, somewhere around there. He might be able to be back. And so, but I think we got a lot better as far as line play in the second half, but I think a lot of it had to do with Ernest Green. And believe me, I know Ernest Green has done some great things for us, but Monroe Freeling really came in, spelled him really well. And I think we got better on the offensive line in the second half. Would you agree?
I'm hoping that Ernest is going to work. They're going to work through that because a lot of his problem was technique. He just was not, he got out over his feet and he wasn't using his hands properly. He wasn't checking properly. So I'm hoping that that's something that they can, coach up and get him back in there as a reliable piece of that front, for the depth for our front line.
Well, and Film Guy he made a comment multiple times. He's like, how in the world are we getting beat inside? Like, you want to make, people like Jalen Walker, who we're not going to talk much defense tonight, but we'll talk about the things that really went well. But Jalen Walker is having to, those outside, those tackles are having to do what they have to do. He just beat some of those tackles to the outside. And so my thing is we're saying if Ernest if he makes sure and gets them to the inside, gets them to the outside, I think we definitely have more time. But
obviously, if you're going to get beat on the outside, because that's where it takes. That's where it takes. You got to have the right dance. You can't get out over your feet, and you got to be athletic to stop that. That bull rush that comes on the outside. So
yeah. What do you think? If any, I got Mike Bobo in play calling. Let's talk to some of these fans who are like Mike Bobo play calling. What the guy only had 23 chances in the first half to call a play. And 3 of those plays he was conceding third down, which one of them, I don't know if you remember the concede on third down, but that was when, Beck decided to drop the snap, pick it up and chunk it into the secondary, which could have been bad. But he didn't have a lot to work with the first half. Now, if I'm being honest with you in the second half, I think that he got pretty ballsy in the second half. I think we did exactly what we needed to do. We were second and third and mid 7, 8 yards where it's like, okay, do we run the ball here, keep the clock rolling? Yeah. But the biggest call we had was when we ran the play action to Delp, which we almost fumbled the ball away that actually got us a first down. But that was that was a good play call of his because the old Bobo would have just ran zone right there and said, let's just let the defense, try to win it for us. But we got a first down. And it probably sealed the deal in the game, even though we ended up giving it back to us. But what do you think about Bobo's play call? Do you think it had anything to do with any of this on offense?
No, man. Austin Brooks went through every play. And there was some plays, where we ran the ball into the box where it would have been better to check out and throw a swing pass or something. But, other than those few plays, he had called the right play for the situation.
Right.
We just didn't execute.
Yeah.
We had problems on both tackles, and we had problems with all of our receivers blocking. And it was like there were so many plays too that if one person hadn't have missed their assignment, it would have gone to the house. There was 3 plays like that, I believe, that he outlined, and I was like, wow. I mean, guys, I didn't see it, but he was right. There's nothing but grass. If this guy, if somebody makes this block, it's just grass.
Right.
So,
yeah. And you kind of got the feeling, as the night went on, and we'll talk about it. I will open it a little bit and talk a little bit about what we thought went right. But you kind of got that feeling towards the end of the night. You were like, they're going to have a breakout run here in a minute. They kept on, trying to peck away at the middle. They were getting some nice 7, 8 yard, 12 yards falling forward.
Tell you what, Entine was. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say bad stuff about him, but I was highly impressed because he made a whole lot out of nothing.
We're talking about ETN.
Yeah,
yeah, I agree. I think ETN was one of the biggest flashes, but when you look at it though, I think that's what people are missing is they're like, well, our defensive line is soft. Our defensive line is missing 3. I mean, it's missing 15 stars, man. It's missing 15 stars. And I'm not trying to make excuses, but you're looking at Nazir Stackhouse and Christian Miller, and you're saying, by the way, Christian Miller was not even supposed to be in this rotation right here, right? Christian Miller was actually portal bound and came back. But when you look at the play of the defensive line, this is the defensive line that still did not give up a touchdown. They continued to bury the middle. And then we had to adapt, right? Because second half, we started continuing to bury the middle, but we started intentionally bouncing everything outside, right? And that got us a little bit second half. And I think some of our Georgia fans that are not, I don't know, man, they maybe don't look at the film or maybe even look at it from a perspective of a coach. I get it. You look at it as a fan and you go, what are we doing? What are we doing? We did it. We texted back and forth. But what you didn't look at was the fact that they had a plan and we still had to respect Brock Vandegrift's arm because this team saw Brock Vandegrift every single day in practice. They saw how elusive he is on his wheels. We had Brock Vandegrift behind the line of scrimmage 3 to 4 times and couldn't get him sacked, right? So we know what he can do on his legs. We know what his arm was doing. I think he was incredibly accurate.
He made some killer throws. I mean, he was 51% maybe, but his wheels and some of the throws he made were killer. I mean, he hurt us.
Yeah. So I think
they stayed on the field way too much.
Go ahead. I know what you're going to say.
I mean, we had some of the poorest tackling at the first level and second level, and we would get hits. Where the 2 people would hit the runner.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, okay, we're going to stop him here and get off the field. And after 2 people hit him, he would spin out and get 4 more yards. And you're like, what?
Yeah. But when you look at this is, and we're going to go to the good here because I think we're going to wrap this session up of like, what do we think went wrong? I think we've summed it up with a couple of these things. I think we know that play calling was not the issue. I was thinking Bobo for a little while. I think everybody in my household heard me go, what is Bobo doing? Because we always seem to go to that, right? But I did my homework like I normally do. And I go back and I watched, just the offensive highlights. And I looked, man, and I even looked at defensive stuff too. And I'm like, people can have the meltdown that they want to, but the teams that are 1, 4, and 6 right now in the AP top 25 and also have not played any SEC games yet. Tennessee has yet to play an SEC game. They play their first one this weekend. Alabama is yet to play an SEC game. They don't play this weekend. If I'm not mistaken, we're their first SEC game, right?
I think they're off this week too.
Yeah, they are. And then you got Texas, who has yet to play an SEC game. I think they play. Forgive me, but I think they play another School of the Blind this week. I have to look. The picks we'll pick them tomorrow night with Mr. Fish on the line with us. But when you look at that, it's like this was not only our first true road game, it was our first SEC game of the year against for all we know, they got beat 31-6 by South Carolina. Now we all saw that South Carolina was not that bad. So my thing is like if you're looking ahead in any way to Georgia, we can definitely see what may have happened, right? And we could have been looking a little bit towards Alabama.
I think you're right. I think that Kentucky might have been looking to Georgia.
Mm-hmm. They had a great game plan.
Their pants down, and then they were super prepared for us, and we're looking at how they played against South Carolina. Now, maybe not the coaches, but maybe the psychology of the players are thinking, this is going to be a cakewalk.
Completely different team. Completely different team. Defense is kind of the same. It's fast, but Lenore Sellers is not Carson Beck.
It's I think that's plausible.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. I think I actually, you know what? I'm gonna look at it like this. I think it's good because I think Kirby coaches better when he's got when he's got an axe to grind, and he can hold it over the team and hold them accountable and work on things, and he's getting their attention because they just made a mockery of themselves. And so I think it's an advantage for Georgia. I think they play better when they're ranked second. I think it's better for the psychology. I think it's better for the coaches to give them that upper hand over the psychology of the players.
I agree. I totally agree. And you look at Texas, and we're going to look at it in a second, but I don't really care what the rankings are. I mean, I'm with Kirby on this. He preaches this. I don't care what our rankings are right now. We could be 10. It doesn't matter. What it matters is that we all have to play the games, and we all have to figure out how to get in the playoff. And the number one team, no matter what, is going to play a game, whether it's the second week of the playoffs. Obviously, it's the second week of the playoffs, but they're going to have to play a football team. And that number on beside them is not going to mean a difference if they lose that game, because that just means there's proving grounds for the end of that playoff. There'll be a number one team crowned national champion. And, that I know of, and you can remind me of this. I don't think we were ranked number one when we won national championships in both years. We were not the number one team in the nation.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, and that's when I just pulled out of my hat. So let's look at things. So we just talked about the sky's not falling, right? So what went good?
Here's the optimism, I think, looking at this. When you go back and look at it, all this stuff that happens coachable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just lost you. Hang on. I don't know what happened there.
You're here. You're still on.
So everything that happened was coachable. Some technique, some tackling, all of this blocking, all this stuff is coachable.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I'm looking at, if we can get past these injuries and not get completely obliterated with injuries, and we can get to the end of the season and we're in position to go into the playoffs, and we're finally beginning to gel, our leadership has evolved and taken over this team, because I don't know where the leadership is yet. I don't know where the leadership is with the receivers. I think Entine is a leader and trying to be a leader. Beck's quiet. The defense, I mean, we gotta watch and see how this leadership of this team evolves. And if the leadership evolves and we get to the end of the season and we're not obliterated with injuries and we're beginning to gel, we'll be in a prime position to go into the playoffs. That's what I think, and that's kind of the way I'm looking for this season. I'm not sure we're going to win every game, and I'm okay with that. I just want to stay healthy and continue to improve, and this team work out those issues where that leadership evolves, takes over the team, and they decide that we're going to make a run for the national championship. That's going to be great.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. To our fans who are just, you're hurting this week, I'll be honest with you. I personally would probably feel a little bit more uneasy if we blew out Kentucky going into Alabama, because in my opinion, we're still number one. We have nothing to lose. I mean, we have everything to lose at being the number one team in the nation. I'm not saying that I want to lose to Alabama, but I'm saying how much I told you so's are going to happen. Let's just say if Alabama does get a win next week, right?
Right.
How much I told you so they're not the best team in the nation. Nobody said that we were the best team in the nation at the first of the year. And to my knowledge, there's a lot of times where you see these ESPN commentators that are going, look how different this team is from game 1 and 2 to game 10 and 12. look how different of a team this is. And I think when you look at the national championship teams, I think you're onto something because we had not found our groove yet. Nobody's found their groove yet. I mean, we're going to talk about these teams in here in a
Yeah,
second, but
I don't
if
think
you think
anybody
these
knows
teams
who
have,
they are until they played 6 games.
I don't think anybody knows who they are until they actually had a little bit, have been battle tested. We
Yeah.
don't know what's going on that sideline, but there was some leadership that we didn't know was going on Saturday night, because that game was easily, we could be talking about how we need to herd the shepherds and all this stuff and get things right, because that loss is going to give us a kick in the butt. The good thing is we didn't get a loss and we still got a kick in the butt. What more could you have asked for, right? You don't have an L in that column.
I think too, a part of that is the culture, because a couple of years back when we lost first national championship, we were getting beat in the fourth quarter.
Right.
And Kirby did something and changed the culture of this team. And we've been second half teams with the 2 national championships, and since we're second half team. And people say that. And I think part of that culture, the team never panicked. And, obviously the right people stood up and made the right plays so that we walked out of there with a 1-point win.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. What went good? I'll be honest with you. I'll give you a couple of my thoughts about what I thought really went well. I thought Dom Lovett looked good. I think he was our go-to receiver. I think he was the receiver that Beck looked to when it came down to getting the first down, or who's going to catch the ball for the first down. We looked at that play action pass late in the fourth quarter that he caught to get the first down. That, in my opinion, the next play should have sealed the game. But here's a player on my list that didn't look great, but I don't think he got many opportunities to look great. The only time he got a look was when he had a block in the side. I don't think it was a block in the back, but Aaron Smith, who probably took away the big play that could have sealed the deal, and there's no drama from 2 minutes on in that game. I thought also that Colby Young looked really good, made a great catch on the right side of the field for the first down that kind of took that drive where Branson took it in finally for the 1 touchdown of the game. He kind of set that up with a really great catch. I'm seeing him, I think his trust too. Like, the thing I think happened in the first 3 games was, I think now Carson can come away and go, look, I've been to a lot of receivers. I see who's going to be blocking. I see who's going to be catching. I see who I can depend on to do what, right? We've seen what we can depend on out of the backfield. But I think we gained some ground, even though we only won by a point. I'll tell you some other things that I saw was good, and we'll step into the defense just a little bit. I think Jalen Walker, man, just made a name for himself in that game. He is and I've said this for a long time, he's a freak of an athlete. He reminds me of the Javon Curse type guy. He's long, he's fast. He is going to be, I mean, if we can just get Michael Williams healthy and get another body to spare Christian Miller. I mean, if we can get Warren Brinson in there a little bit to spare Nazir and Christian Miller, and Jordan Hall would be huge, man. I mean, we're talking 15 stars on that defensive line. That still didn't give up a touchdown, right? If we can give Jalen Walker some more shots, and I was really impressed with Raylan Wilson as well. I'm not, notice we're not calling the names of the guys that we thought we would be calling. It's not that they're not, I've yet to see Smile really break out this year. I've yet to see CJ, right? CJ Allen, who was a big time. I'm seeing more confidence that Kirby and Schumann have in Raylan. I really am. In the secondary, like, I feel like, you look at Humphreys had to cover a lot more. He had to play a lot more this game, obviously, because Daniel Harris, and we won't get into that tonight, but we still can't figure out why people are driving 120 miles an hour in Athens. But he has to play a lot more players. He has to play a lot more snaps. I saw Ellis Robinson look really good. I saw Dylan Everett make some really good tackles. Like we talked about our tackling, but when he tackled those 2 outside pass plays, I looked at him, and I'm going to be honest with you. I looked and I said, all right, Dalen Everett, one-on-one, this could get scary. I think he made a great tackle both times. I think he's learned a lot. He's come a long way. And I think, the tackling was very, very sketchy the first half. I think it was much improved the second half. But everybody's talking about how soft we were on defense. But But I think those were bright spots
Well,
in the wide receiver.
Miller and Zamir played the whole freaking game, and I mean,
120 snaps.
you got to give those guys like a big hand because they stayed in there, and I mean, I saw Zamir go to the other side of the field and make a tackle on the sideline. And that's phenomenal. I mean, I think our line's going to be fine if we can get those other guys healthy so we can rotate. Because if Zamir is able to run all from the right tackle all the way across the field to the other side and make a tackle on the sideline, if we keep him healthy, let's just keep him going north and going north.
Right.
And
exactly.
Because just give them some rest and let them go. I mean, those guys. That was amazing that they were able to play at that level that long.
And everybody just looked at the, and I get it. You're like, man, how do we get this 510-pound junior transfer, back to come in and run against the number one defense? Well, I mean, he didn't run for over 100 yards that I'm aware of. He didn't run for over 100 yards.
80.
Yeah. So he was only averaging like 4.7 yards a carry, and it was the only offense that was effective. Think about how hard it is, and you played obviously, Richman, but think about how hard it is to keep your eyes, keep getting punched in the face at the point of contact right behind the center, and then all of a sudden you're like, I know Brock Vandegrift can run the ball at any time. I know he can pull this ball, and we're one-on-one behind us. I know we're having to add a lot of linebackers in this box. Imagine how weird it feels to go. It takes a lot of trust. And for our fan base to look at this defensive line and say they're soft, I don't think you can look at it from a term of strength on strength. I mean, if you were catching me off guard every time you were punching me in the face, in other words, like if I clearly didn't know what was coming, had no idea, yeah, man, I'm going to be a little late to some things. I might take a punch that was a little bit, if I'm a little earlier, like it's going to hurt a little less. But I just feel like our eyes, after that first half, our eyes were not expecting Kentucky to just continue to try to drive it down. They were willing to play, as I call it, just they were playing like kind of bully ball and hoping that they could keep the score low.
Yeah, I mean, they had the perfect quarterback to run these RPOs, and I know Austin was looking at some of the RPO. We're running some RPO stuff too, but nobody bites on Beck because they know he's not going to keep it, even when he should.
Yeah, it doesn't even need to be. That is one thing.
They should take that out of the playbook, in my opinion. But
yeah, I agree. And to say that, like I said, and I'll close the books on the defense, but I think the defense, man, if we can, the defensive staff and the defense, if we can get those bodies back healthy, I think you're going to see Ellis Robinson a little bit more. I was really impressed by him. I'm continuously impressed by KJ. I think you're going to see some of these healthy legs in the secondary be key against some of these guys in Alabama's wide receiver room.
I think what you're going to see against Alabama is they're not going to be trying to bull rush Alabama. I think they're going to try to sustain their lanes and keep him back there and make him throw the ball. And he throws the ball great downfield, but his short passing and his intermediate passing is horrendous. Yeah. And if we can keep those receivers in front of us and not let the big one get away, that's what they're going to try to do, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel it's going to get some yards too. We know that, but because he's a freaking fullback quarterback in my book. But
I agree. So where does that? So before we hit some mailbag stuff, so I guess what we want to talk about is we're going into next week, and obviously we're going to be talking a lot about Alabama, Georgia, and Tuscaloosa. So we won't nitpick too much. If anything, we get some freedom to kind of talk about as we call it, the outer shell of what this game looks like on paper. So when you look at beating an Alabama or a Texas, Tennessee, Ole Miss offense, my thing is twofold when you look at these teams. Okay. Number one, the statistic that has not been thrown out there to any of these Georgia fans who think the sky is falling. So yes, Texas, Tennessee, and Ole Miss look incredible on paper. And right now, they look like a little bit more of a powerhouse on offense than Georgia does, right? But I'm just going to tell you, like, Georgia, I'm not making excuses by any means, but Ole Miss doesn't have a quality game until 6 games into their season. And I say quality, that's not, I mean, that's also assuming they do play Kentucky. They play Kentucky actually the same week that Georgia plays Alabama. I'm interested in watching that game at noon because I want to see what Kentucky does with Ole Miss, especially in an offense where they are 80-20 pass over rush. So I'm curious to see this good defense go against Ole Miss. But what I will tell you is that all 3 of these teams have not played anywhere near the schedule that Georgia has played. So when you look at the offensive production, what is that built off of? I would tell you that I really feel like Kentucky and Clemson's defense are much better defenses even than the best 2 or 3 games that they've played. Which, in my opinion, if you look at Alabama, what do you think the best defense that Alabama has played thus far? Would you agree that it's probably Wisconsin?
Probably Wisconsin, and
maybe USF. I mean, what you can look at USF because USF was not a ball. I mean, it wasn't a blowout until 10:26 to go in the game. So I don't know if maybe that's going to be a great tape for Kirby as well. If he needs that tape, I'm right down the road from USF. I can go over there, grab that from Alex Golis and get it to him because that's going to be a great tape. I'm actually going to go back and watch that game later this week as well before next week because I think we can look at Alabama and look where they're vulnerable a lot from that game tape because USF did some things that really kept Alabama. If you look at the yards, I think I put it down. Alabama had 309 yards. USF had 309 total yards on Alabama's defense, and then Alabama only gave up 393. So look at the yardage. I mean, we're within 80 yards of total offense against the team USF. And if you could look and go, who's going to be the problem for Alabama on their schedule? They never thought USF would be. And if you go, I'm ready for this. If you go to the fact of, well, last year they played, USF tight. Well, Georgia's not getting that grace right now, right? So how does Alabama get that grace? Alabama went on to play in the national championship last year and almost lost to a USF team that is probably not near as good as this Kentucky team is this year, right, in my opinion.
I think
but we're not going 1 for 1 because I know what people will say and they'll be like, is that where you want to go with it? But when you look at these teams, Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee, where do these teams stack up as far as like, should we be concerned? Because we look at a playoff, a 12-team playoff, and we go, everybody's talking great things about, Georgia's still probably in. And we'll talk about it in a second in the mailbag about how many losses will get them in. But Georgia, Alabama is still on paper. And as they've looked with Milroe, a contender for the playoffs. Texas, obviously Texas took over the first spot with even a hurt Quinn Ewers. And then you have Ole Miss, who, regardless of who they're playing, they're looking like a playoff team. Tennessee, regardless of who they're playing, they're looking like a playoff team. Obviously, they get their first contest against Oklahoma this week. But then you got Missouri in there, which I'm starting to look at Missouri and go, can you give Missouri the same reaction as you give Georgia and Kentucky? Because Missouri has, I don't know, man. I mean, they played Boston College, who I guess you could say beat Florida State, but is Florida State really that good this year? Because they're 0-3. And Norvell's trying to talk them out of firing him right now.
He's trying to talk himself off the cliff.
Exactly. So how good, because we're going to just talk about this will get us into our mailbag. How good are these other 5 teams? Who do you think is real out of these 5 teams?
Dude, I don't think you can say until after you put some power on power. I think the first interesting game, well, not the first interesting game because I think Georgia's opening game was very interesting, but Oklahoma and Tennessee, that's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
I agree.
That's
and you answered my question with what you just said.
Some power on power, but nobody else. Look, if Georgia shows up and we play fundamentally sound football and we're not beat up,
we don't lose.
We could run the table, right. But I don't know, I'm not worried about Alabama. If we show up and play fundamentally sound football, I think we can beat them.
Yeah.
I think I trust that Schumann and Kirby are going to come up with a good defensive plan to hem Milroe up and confuse him. But I think they're highly beatable. It's just we got to
Right.
show up and play fundamentally sound, which means we got to block and we got to tackle. If we show up and block and tackle, I think we can beat anybody.
I agree. Which you answered my question. You just didn't realize it. I don't think there's so many writers. ESPN is, you look at who's my boy Desmond Howard from Game Day is, which is fine. They're giving Texas. He's like Texas is better than that's fine. Get us in the playoff. We're going to see in Austin soon. And I don't even know if that's going to be the game that decides it. I do think there is power in practicing for 12, 13, 14 weeks, figuring out where your leadership lies, being battle tested. The playbook better than you've ever known it. You have freshmen that, are starting games, the first 3 games that are now.
By the end of the season, these guys are going to be seasoned. They're going to be experienced.
So my thing is, you answer the question. We don't know how good. They're giving Tennessee as this great team, and it's all based off of NC State, which we don't know if they're great because the ACC is just really, really rough right now, man. The ACC is nothing like anybody thought it would be.
Well,
Florida State was picked to win the ACC, and they are bad.
Let me go back and say something. And I think I've said this before on this program, but the portal is great because you can plug holes with some talent that you need. But the portal is also creating a situation, I think, where early in the season you're seeing some sloppy
Mm-hmm.
football.
Mm-hmm.
Sloppy football. The teams there's no cohesiveness because you brought in 3, 4, 5 new people into the system that didn't earn it from the bench.
Right.
So there's a lot of dynamics going on with the portal other than just, filling a spot with a star, with a higher star than you had before.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I agree. I don't think you can really, you cannot, honestly, the media thing with Georgia right now is almost kind of funny because it's like, you're gauging Alabama, LSU, and you're going, well, they looked good. Well, no offense, like Tennessee Tech and Georgia looked really good against Tennessee Tech, and all I'm saying is like, you can't do that. I think it's their job to create a narrative, but don't create a narrative on Tennessee and how they're a playoff team right now when they have yet to play a game. If you're thinking NC State NC State was not an opponent that, in my opinion, and if Missouri is having trouble with Boston College, I like Bill O'Brien. I think they did some good things against Florida State. But if it was that close against a Boston College, I think Boston College is a mid to low level SEC team in the first year with Bill O'Brien. So that means that you're going to have problems even with the A&Ms, with the LSUs, with the Kentuckys, I think you're going to figure out Kentucky's going to be a middle of the SEC team by the end of the year. We can go back and look at that at some time, but I just think the narrative right now is crazy. Alabama is going to play its first real game to know where you at against Georgia. And we said they would because we thought Wisconsin would be somewhat of a challenge. But when I looked at Wisconsin, the biggest thing you didn't see with Wisconsin, Richman, was Tyler Van Dyke went out in the first quarter. That's a different game if that doesn't happen.
It was, yeah.
It's a different game. And USF, USF does not have the I'll go to stars again. They don't have the stars that line up with Georgia's stars as far as talent to chase Milroe around, yet I think they contain him very well. That tape is going to be very key. It's gold. I would say that somebody needs to be paying Golish to not give it to Kirby, because if that tape lands into Kirby, which I think it will, then we're going to have a really great game plan against, and this is not Nick Saban, and I'm not counting out Kalen DeBoer, but I will tell you that I got to see Tennessee against Oklahoma this weekend, and then maybe next week when we go on, I can tell you if they're real or not. I won't know with Alabama. Texas, I think Texas is real, but I think I think what people don't understand is that Texas has not played an SEC game yet. Texas was real last year when they played in the Big 12, but they haven't played an SEC team yet. They haven't played anybody. And so, of course, going up to first place, if anything, that might help us. There's a reason why Georgia's the number one in the SEC right now, and it's because we're only one of 4 teams who've actually played an SEC game. That's South Carolina, Kentucky, who's 0-2, South Carolina, who's 1-1, Georgia, who's 1-0, and I think it's Vanderbilt. I think maybe it's just 3 teams. I don't know. But nobody else has played an SEC game. So we're going to talk about it a lot next week, but I just think they're holding the narrative over Georgia's head right now about Kentucky, but you can't just bolster these 4 or 5 teams off of playing Chattanooga and Kent State. Kent State's the worst. It was 60-something to 0 in the first half. Like, I mean, no offense, Kirby's son could have thrown for 400 yards against Kent State. You know, I mean, it's just a terrible narrative. Let's hop into, I think this will be fun to end the night off. Let's hop into, I think we can all say this, Richman, is what we got from the film was, look, the sky's not falling in Athens as far as offense. And then me and Fish are going to talk about defense tomorrow night a little bit more and look into some of the narrative of that. But, you know, the sky's not falling in Athens. I think if the big thing is we have to go out there every night and understand we're always going to get everybody's best game. Everybody's best game is coming our way, regardless of who we are. And I get it. We're Alabama. We're Texas. Texas is looking at Georgia as, oh, Georgia's the SEC powerhouse? Yeah, you're getting our best game. Alabama's looking at Georgia and going, well, we're not going to change the narrative. We're going to own Georgia like we've always owned Georgia. This is Nick Saban this year. We got to beat them because if they beat us, they're going to only say that we're good because Saban beat us. Like, everybody's going to have a narrative against us, and I know Kirby will be in their ear. I've seen so many memes from old school Kirby conversations at practice and also from some locker room conversations that went viral in the past few years. I can guarantee you the after game, there was a little celebration for the win. I think you could tell that everybody said it. For us to come out of that game with a win was good. We're not learning a lesson from a dumb loss, but I will tell you that Sunday we were in there and he said it. You could tell it. He said it in his voice in his presser. He said, everybody's talking about we got a week to get well. We got a week to get better. And he's like, we might not get well, but we got to get better. And I can tell you that they weren't talking about injuries on Sunday night and Monday morning. He was coaching and they were in their face. They will do everything they possibly can this week and next week to get them ready for Alabama. And I think this could be a good thing. It could be a good thing.
The way this Kentucky game came out was probably a gift.
Yeah, I agree.
And I
totally agree.
And I think, you know, like I said before, I think Kirby coaches better from that position.
I agree.
You know, that second place with a chip on his shoulder.
I agree. Let's hop in the mailbag. If you have mailbag questions, you can send it to dogsdownsouth@gmail.com. We did have a few come in, so they were I appreciate those. Those are from a couple of listeners that we've had come on. I had one sent to us from a person who doesn't watch the show, who wanted their question read, and we're going to read it. But you can also put questions in the chat as well. If you have questions as you go back and listen, we are up to over 275 listens and views on Apple Podcasts. So make sure 24 hours from now, you know, this episode will be up on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you go follow us on Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. We really need the following there. Trying to get to 1,000 followers there. And you never know, man. We may can get some more technology built around this. Right now, we're all just volunteering at this thing. So let's hop right in. Alabama, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. We talked a little bit about this, right? So Alabama, obviously, on USF, gave up 309 yards of total offense as to their 393, and it was very close in that game until the fourth quarter, 10-26 in the fourth quarter. You look at Tennessee, NC State barely beat Western Carolina and Louisiana Tech. They beat these two teams by a combined 14 points, and Western Carolina and Louisiana Tech, these are all teams that we're not looking at as college playoff contenders, right? Those starters should have been out in the second half, and instead NC State starters were fighting for victory. So should Tennessee have blown that team out? If it's an SEC team with a chance and they want to win the SEC in the playoffs, they should be blowing these teams out. So I think they should have blown NC State out. You look at Ole Miss. The teams that they have played are combined 3-6. The teams that Ole Miss have played, and they're playing a Georgia Southern team this week that they're favored over 35 points against. So
Georgia Southern will probably give them a better look than they've seen yet.
I agree. I totally agree. But still, it's like when you look at that compared to what some other teams are looking at this week and next week, it's crazy, man, what Ole Miss has got on their schedule. And so the question is I have to us tonight from the mailbag is, should Georgia still be favored in Tuscaloosa over Alabama? And right now, the books have it at 3.5. Georgia's favored by 3.5 in Tuscaloosa. You think that's right? What do you think about favored right now?
I think they should be favored. And I think, I don't know, man. I'd go 6.5.
Yeah.
I
think this team's going to come in really mad. I'm ready for next week because, there's been many weeks where I've come in and I've looked at this team and I've just said, but I'm looking at the backbone of our what I'm betting on this week and next week is that we should be coming in physically and mentally prepared, and we have the coaching staff. If we can't get to where we want to get with this coaching staff, something is missed. We have the talent. We have an incredible defensive staff, an incredible offensive staff. And I think, as we talk keys to the game next week, it'll come out a little bit. But I'm gonna talk like I don't usually talk, not smack, but I'm very confident that we will look the part next week. I really am. I think
so too. I think you give Kirby 2 weeks, and he usually gets the guys ready to play. And like we said over and over, all the things that we saw that were despicable in this game are fixable. So
yeah. I'll tell you another thing, man. I would love
Kirby's
to be
a really good fixer.
Yeah, I'd love to be at practice next Tuesday. Woo! I know Bloody Tuesday was probably not great this week because of Bloody Tuesday on a bye week after what we put out there. But Bloody Tuesday on a Bama week, my prayer is that we come out healthy from that. That's all I'm saying. Second question: have we met the end of where Mike Bobo can take the UGA offense in the future? Like I know we all look at Bobo and he hasn't evolved a lot. I think it did him really good that he kind of hung out and did some things with prior offensive coordinators that were here. Do we think Bobo is the answer for the future of where offenses are going in college football and in the SEC? What do you think?
Well, I was on the Bobo bandwagon until I started watching Austin Brooks a couple of years ago, and he's always, like taking, this Bobo needs to go, and he breaks down the film, and he's like, he made the right call, he's doing the right thing. He he shows where the grass is, and this is where the play went. I have it until I see where he is making really, really stupid plays that don't fit with the defense, and he is running or playing to their strength. Until I start seeing that consistently, I think Bobo is good to go.
Yeah, and his whole thing is I think pre I guess pre like head coaching experience by Bobo when he went to Colorado State.
He was putting up 40 points a game when he left.
But you give me that Bobo, and I think he looks a little bit more predictable. He's a little bit more of like, I'm pulling my hair out. But now, after you leave a Todd Monken, and what he got from Todd Monken, I think what the meeting was about between Kirby and Monken and them as he started to kind of just, not necessarily shadow Monken, but just sit with him and go, what's been working for you at UGA is the fact of getting the ball to playmakers. Now, the thing we got to really start finding is who are the playmakers. I noticed, and we've said this, we didn't. Brock Bowers, man, he's the best. He possibly is the third best tight end in the NFL right now. A tight end has never won Rookie of the Year in the NFL. He has got an opportunity to do that because I think you can look at a Caleb Williams who's not having a very good first few games in the NFL, and you can obviously look at a couple of other rookies. You can look at Jaden Daniels. he's not really scoring a lot of points. I mean, Washington won off of a ton of field goals. So you can look at Brock Bowers and go, is he after 2 weeks in the NFL, is he rookie of the year candidate? He is, but he was a go-to guy for UGA. Like in the dark, Carson's like, when I turn around, if I need a ball caught, I'm throwing it towards him. Lab McConkey. You look at these guys, right? You look at the guys that were the go-to guys. Lab McConkey, this is also on a team at the Chargers who have just so happened to turn their season around. They're 2-0, and Lab McConkey's sitting on that team with Mr. Harbaugh.
And making plays.
Making plays. And so I think what's very crucial is who are the go-to guys in this offense. We got to get back to the days of when Bobo was calling the plays. And then when the play is called, I think Beck has to go back to the fact of it's not designed. I don't think it is. I could be wrong, and I could be talking completely wrong football right here. It's not designed for check 1 to 4. It's designed I'm looking playmaker, I'm looking check down. That's what it's designed to do.
Right.
It is. Dylan Bell had a pretty good game for only getting targeted twice. But he got unfairly targeted because the ball was nowhere near where he was able to get to it. And Dylan Bell is a great route runner, and he has great hands. He was not given the opportunity to be a game changer because of the fact that the ball was nowhere near him. But if you look at him as a playmaker, then you got to be able to go, I got to throw the ball in his area code and trust that. Give him the first look, second look. Give Dom the first look. Whoever they are, give it to him. I didn't see London Humphreys. I thought London Humphreys had had 2 really good games against Clemson. Thought he had and we didn't see much against Tennessee Tech, but I think that's somebody you didn't see a lot of. But we could go on this all day, but I think the UGA offense needs to go back to getting Carson comfortable with finding the playmakers. And I think right now he's just so busy trying to check things down and look around. He's trying to figure out who his playmakers are. I think he needs to pick some people out. It's kind of like, PlayStation football. If you always look at this play and you go to square, then 70% of the time you need to trust you can go to square or triangle or whatever. I think you just need to start doing that. And I think that's what he did with McConkey and Bowers. But I'll give you something before we move on. Did not the Carson Beck of the Kentucky game kind of look like the Carson Beck of the Alabama game in the SEC championship? Did he not kind of look like that? Who was missing Saturday and who was missing in that SEC championship game?
Bowers
and McConkey. They were both missing.
Both out. Yeah, that's right.
Sorry, I had to cough. So what does that tell me? That tells me that Beck has not solidified where he wants to go with the ball, and he's still doing a 1 to 4 check. And in the defense that Kentucky was throwing at us, hey, man, it was hard to read, man. It was hard to read. You were reading, like we taught, we were reading cover 3 shell, cover 2 quarters. We were reading bear. They were sneaking. The nickel, they talked a lot about this. The nickel had to play big boy football. They put him in the box, and they made him play hybrid so that they could flex in there and go, you got to make a tackle, but you got to be able to go one-on-one with anybody out of the backfield. That was able to help that shell not beat them. We did not throw one deep ball all night long. I think if you consider the Dom Lovett pass deep, that was the biggest gain of the night, and that was what? 14 yards?
I bet you – I'm going to jump to next week. I bet you next week they're going to be man, and it's going to be a lot easier on Beck. Because when he looks out there and he sees man, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and Alabama takes we can talk about it next week, but they take a lot more chances in their secondary. Keon Sabb is really good, but they take a lot of chances, and against good teams that have disciplined quarterbacks and disciplined receivers that run great routes, you got to be careful of that, because back in the day where, when Malachi went through a phase where he made a play. I remember when he was a freshman, he made that play against Oregon. He had a couple of games after that he was just more of a ball, like he would go get it more. And you got to remember, Kirby would always used to remind, your job is not to it is to go get the ball, but it's also to make sure you are covering to where that the receiver doesn't have an opportunity to get the ball.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter if you miss the catch and they get it, we're done. But if you're getting the ball out of the way, nobody has the opportunity to make the catch. We live to play another down. So that could be something that's sketchy. Let's move on real quick for time's sake. So This was the question right here from this past week that was asked on multiple fronts of a multiple podcasts all along the SEC. How good is Georgia's defense? Can it be a deal breaker? You know, Georgia had a subpar performance, in my opinion, against Kentucky. Subpar. We had flashes of greatness. Subpar. It had injuries, and it had, in my opinion, a lot of plays. We were on the field a lot in that game. But seeing how that panned out and seeing the growth, what does this defense look like going forward, and how good can it really be?
Yeah, I think a lot of that's going to be determined by if we can get some help back on the line, because if those guys have to play, 4 quarters every game, first of all, are they going to make it to the end of the season? And second, what are in a game where they're playing, like in Alabama or Tennessee, Texas, what do they look like? Playing 4 quarters without any help. I think that's going to be a big part of this. If we can get back to where we can rotate and rest those big guys, our linebacker play is much better this year than last year. We've got players all over the place. We got players on the edge, and I'm not concerned about our secondary. I mean, Bolden looks really good. I mean, he's a freshman. He's probably going to make some mistakes here earlier in the season, but by the end of the season, man, what is he going to look like? He's going to be seasoned. He'll be salty.
I totally agree.
So I'm really optimistic. I think this defense could really turn into something special. But I mean, I really think it's going to depend on can we get some help back in the line and rotate these guys. Because, I mean, that's how we won our 2 national championships. We were rolling guys in and rolling guys out, and they were fresh. And if we don't have that, that's gonna be a problem.
I agree.
I
totally agree.
Especially, we always like to say about the SEC, because it's going to be a meat grinder from here on out.
Yeah. I will tell you something, and people are going to probably look and go, I get this, but all right. When Georgia plays each other, we talk about it, Bloody Tuesday. We talk about red versus black on G-Day and things of that nature. A lot of our players talk about how, Carson's like, I don't like playing Georgia's defense. And Georgia's defense is like, I don't like playing against you put their Carson Beck, because he's so intuitive about things and they go at each other a lot. But my thing is like, I think we can get to a point where people are really going to hate playing against us because at the end of the day, we go against one of the best offenses in the country, and Bolden is seeing that every day.
Hey, can I back up and say something?
Because go ahead.
You just made me think of something. Let's go back to the Kentucky game. You can't tell me Brock and Pop didn't bring. You can't tell me they didn't have a lot of skull sessions with the coaches and come up with this strategy. I mean, it was a perfect storm.
Brock Vandegrift, that was his job for the entire year, the last 2 years, is to figure out how to cause Georgia's defense to look absolutely crazy so that they could be the best prepared for every team. He led the scout team both years.
So those 2 players had a huge impact on the way that game played out, in my opinion.
Exactly. You don't think they're sitting with coaches going, hey, this is what – I mean –
well, remember in Austin's film, he said that the nickel was pointing, and he said he knew exactly where the play was going to go. So we're giving something away on that play. Don't know what it was.
Well, and you notice what the nickel was doing, right? The nickel was freeing Pop up to run freely, which is where Nakobe Dean made his. I mean, that's where he made his career at Georgia. Is when, man, it was so eerily familiar to watch how that defense played our offense Saturday night. It's because Nakobe Dean made a career out of out of those big, Jalen Walker and all them taking on two linemen and them being able to run free. It just reminded you a lot of
Just
those
blow
two
up plays.
defenses. And that's what, Dumas Johnson had 3 tackles, but he was really able to be there and to quarterback that defense. They had a good shot. I mean, they had the perfect storm, man. They had the two main leaders of that team, middle linebacker, quarterback, were 2 Georgia players from last year. So, you're listening to the plays. The guy with the helmet on, where all that communication is coming through, were Georgia players from last year. You're not going to have that, anymore this year. That's the perfect storm. Kentucky got the 2 quarterbacks per se of both sides of the line of scrimmage, and so I don't know. I look and talk about it more, and it's not to make myself feel better. It's just I think sometimes you can look at the sky falling, and none of these other teams have been battle tested yet. Tennessee will be battle tested this week. Texas will not. Texas has not played anybody. Michigan is not Michigan. I repeat, Michigan is not Michigan. It's not the Harbaugh Michigan.
They're an empty vessel.
Yeah, they're not. It's that win.
Wisconsin was an empty vessel. I was surprised. I thought they would have been a little bit more sturdy.
I agree. I totally agree. That's going to do it for us tonight. We're a little over time, but I think it's good, wholesome conversation to let people know that, hey, like, at the end of the day, it's a really good time to go back and talk about the game. We've had a couple of days to actually kind of get the, I don't know, I'm pissed off about this and I'm pissed off about that out of our system, and really look at the X's and O's of what the game brought on. I think, and I don't think we're making excuses. I think what we can round it up, and I'll let you kind of round up your end tonight, is I think we can look on offense and go, we blew some assignments. We got blown up on the left side of the line a lot. We didn't play sound football. I mean, Urasek, I've heard some really bad comments about Urasek. I think Oscar Delp blocked his tail off Saturday night, thank God, because you didn't see Kirby relying on Urasek a lot when it came down to assignment football, when they needed to kind of go outside of the box. And Delp was really key, and I think that's what got Delp open later on in the night, was he was doing a lot of the dirty work in that box to create some things for Carson and create some things for the run game. I think Trevor Etienne, I don't think he's like any other back that we've ever had. I think he creates a lot of space in little space. He can make guys miss. One-on-one, which I feel like is something in the past where we've had guys that can run people over one-on-one. But I think he presents something for us that is different, and we're going to talk about it as we lead up in Alabama as well. He presents a lot of problems for Alabama. And also I think Jalen Walker is just he is a different human being, man. He is going to really he reminds me of what we were talking about with CJ Allen this time last year, and he has grown a lot as a player. And if I didn't go back and say this, what I was getting to earlier. When Georgia is playing good on good in the G-Day game, who was the player of the game in G-Day on defense this past year? Michael Williams. New position. They're putting him in players. If you can get Michael back at least 80, 90%, and Jalen Walker in there, and our secondary is playing at a high level, and we can just get a little rotation on that defensive line, a Brinson that can get in there for Nazir 20 snaps, maybe a Jordan Hall. I don't know when he's due back. I'll look that up before next week. But this defense is just what we're looking for going into. We got to keep Jalen Milroe contained and off the field, and get off the field on third down. And for God's sake, stop committing penalties on third down. Yes, I know some of those were just bad calls. I mean, Jalen Walker was a horrible call. Horrible call. The block in the back by Arian Smith was a horrible call.
That was a horrible call.
He blocked him in the side.
But he didn't even really block him. He just put his hands out. Yeah. The guy was already falling into the line of scrimmage.
I agree. But it is what it is. I mean, Stoops is 0-2. We learned off of a win. And so I think we learned a lot off of a win. So that's our time for tonight. So thank you, everybody, for joining. Obviously, if you did not get a chance to hear this live, we will be on Apple Podcasts as soon as this time tomorrow evening. So make sure you catch it on your ride into work or sometime during the week before you have your meltdown for the week. And I will tell you, I think this was a very wholesome conversation about the offense. from this past week, because every other podcast about Georgia right now, everybody is in put your head between your legs and make a wish mode, and we're not there yet. Go watch Austin and the film guy, and you tell me you don't think the same thing. So for myself, yeah, go ahead, Richman.
Get you some milk and cookies. We're gonna be all right.
We're gonna be all right, man. I think we are too. I think we will be ready. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing a really hungry team against Alabama next week. We're going to talk about it. Join tomorrow night. I'm going to be hanging out with Mr. Adam Fisher tomorrow night. We're going to be talking a little bit more about the defense. We're going to do all our picks for the week, as well as a little bit more mailbag and some things. First and 15 is going to be in there. So that'll be great. So make sure you join tomorrow night. And then next week will be incredible as we lead up to Georgia, Alabama, 7:30. I'm guaranteed. I'm just thinking, man, you got game day. I think game day knows where they're going for that game. I'm thinking you're going to see game day in Tuscaloosa. This is going to be a big time scene. I'm also wondering, man, maybe if game day would have showed up Georgia, Kentucky, maybe we're a little bit more hyped up for that game. That was Kentucky's fault. So Kentucky should have beat South Carolina, and game day would have been on hand for that. So for myself, Richman, always good, man. As always, go follow Dogs Down South. You guys have a great week, and go Dogs.
Go Dogs.